Well, I think the first thing they're going to do is you're going to see more investment by the government into energy, whether it's the grid, whether it's production, whether it's, sustainment. I think we're definitely going to see more investment. The other thing that I would see, and one that I'm excited about and we're really proud to be a part of, is I think the biggest thing we're going to see is hopefully the benefits of these reshoring efforts. I think the big one right now that most people are talking about is in the semiconductor space. I mean, if you think about what's going on there, out in Arizona, it's awesome. But I think that's just one example. We're going to see more of this reshoring, and what I really hope is that that's the sort of a renaissance of our manufacturing industrial base.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Future of GovCon. This is a weekly podcast to bring together experts from across the industry and look at what's happening today and how it's going to impact the future of our industry. I'm Jake Frazer. I'm the owner and CEO of Precision Talent Solutions. In leading one of the industry's top executive search firms, I get to talk to influencers every day. C-suite executives, board members, growth leaders, top government officials, military flag officers. And on this podcast, what we're doing is we're bringing in these experts from AI, from space, from medical, from logistics, from engineering. And we're sitting down and talking about what's happening in their specific area of the industry and how it will impact the future. So pour a cup of coffee and let's get started. Hey everybody, it's Jake and welcome back to another episode of the Future of GovCon. We have flag officers and ambassadors and SESs, but what I really love to do is bring on some of the top CEOs from across the industry to get to sit down and pick their brains. And today we got a doozy. As our guest today, we have the CEO of Siemens Government Technologies, SGT, as we call it out in the industry, Mr. John Ustica. John, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, good morning, Jake. It's really great to be here. Happy to be with you today and look forward to the conversation.
John and I have gotten to know each other through PSC, I think mainly out in the industry, but you see John everywhere. He's a leader in the community and pretty good at networking and getting the word out of what he's doing with SGT. So today's your chance to touch a lot of people, John.
Well, I'm really looking forward to it, and I think we have a great message as Siemens, and there's a lot of things going on in our industry right now which are really amazing. So I'm really happy and honored to talk to you about it.
So everybody listening in on this, here's what John's brings. It's a lot different. I mean, we had a lot of folks that were former military or government and then somehow got in the industry. And John brings a whole different perspective from literally the factory floor, working his way up inside one of the biggest, probably most complex companies in the world with Siemens, and given the opportunity to build out and grow a federal division, obviously, foci, separated with the security clearance and everything. So John's kind of coming at everything from a different angle, and he'll talk more about what Siemens does. But we're going to talk about energy, a lot about energy, because that's a core delivery capability of Siemens. It's also a hot topic today, everything from data centers to smart cities. And Siemens is obviously one of the market leaders on that. So definitely stick around so you can hear through what John's got to say about these key topics.
Yeah, there's a lot to talk about there. So I'd love to unpack some of it with you over the next hour or so, Jake.
So look, before we get into that, John's got a great life story. In fact, he and I stumbled across each other over here in Switzerland in Zug and had a nice dinner down by the lake, watched the most beautiful sunset in the world. So I've gotten to know John a little bit personally. So he has a great life story. So talk to us a little bit about growing up and some of the things that shaped you, John.
Yeah, I think for those folks who know me, the biggest thing that probably shaped me is I'm a cancer survivor, childhood cancer survivor. So when I was 6 years old, I had what's called a Wilms tumor. It involved a few surgeries, a removal of my kidney, along with a tumor that was about the size of a there was an argument between the doctors if it was a football or a volleyball or a basketball. It doesn't matter, in a 7-year-old kid, that's a pretty big, thing. So had that 65 weeks of chemo afterwards, pretty much missed most of first grade and about half of second grade as a result. And what was a lasting effect of that was there was a lot of things that I couldn't do growing up because of medical reasons. You can't play football because what if you're things? You can't do this, can't do this. And I think that shaped a lot of my personality it shaped me as a person and how I work with a team. In terms of, one thing that my team knows is you can't tell me we can't do something. So we always try to find the solution for the customer for whatever we're up against, and I think that's really what shaped me. Having and that also made me curious. And I think that's one of the great things about working for an international company is in my past, before I was in GovCon, having the ability to live abroad and to learn another language and to really learn a culture. Not only, from just going to meetings, but really living it. And I'm working in a factory in Germany and seeing how people live and really getting to know them and running into them at the town square on Saturday and having a beer. It was really learning a lot. I think had I not had some of that adversity as a child, I may not have been as open to wanting to learn and do things, or to after 17 years being in building large scale power generation stuff, come and work in the GovCon sector. But it's really been a great journey, and I've learned so much. And I just feel like those of us here that are in the GovCon sector have such an impact on our nation. It's almost becomes a duty to really serve the customer and the DOW and all those that we serve.
That's an interesting backdrop because, I mean, clearly what you've done with Siemens Government Technologies is it shows that kind of that fight, right? You have to go earn it, and can't take no for an answer. Talk about your career. It's not the normal profile of our guest here. How did you get into Siemens, and what was it like working inside this large German company?
Yeah, it was an interesting story. So in fact, I'm within days of being 25 years graduating from college, so I'm definitely starting to feel old. But when I was getting ready to graduate from the University of Central Florida, I really was looking at two main companies. One was Siemens Westinghouse Power, which is now today Siemens Energy, and the other one was Lockheed Martin. And I had been through interviews and I had been in the facilities. For those who know, Lockheed Martin has a large facility in Orlando, not far from where the U.S. headquarters of our energy business is. And at that time it was the middle of the gas turbine boom. So you remember, maybe you've heard, remember a company called Enron, and that whole thing was ongoing. And I'm at that time, energy just sounded amazing, so I made the decision to go to energy over Lockheed Martin. Well, it took 17 years. And then I was asked to move up here to DC to be the CFO for Siemens Government Technologies. So I actually started on a finance track, and after being on a delegation in Germany, was asked to in my early 30s to go back and to be the lead of a facility in Fort Payne, Alabama. The folks there embraced me and taught me a lot of hard lessons. As a guy who has a finance degree, doesn't understand engineering, to be at a small site, kind of disconnected, hard to get to, wasn't, everything. We were on our own, and the team there, is just awesome. And they're still there, I'm sure, making tons of generator parts today and doing an amazing job at it. And so I switched sort of from finance into this general management thing. And what that really taught me was I really had to have amazing people around me, because with the education and the background I had, I could have never survived in those jobs, if I would have not had the best folks around me. And that was what it really taught me. And that's one of the pinnacles of leadership I have today. I want to have folks on my leadership team that are smarter than me and have skills that I don't have, so that we complement each other. And I think was, asked by the board almost 4 years ago now to move over and be the CEO of SGT. And it's just been a great, it's been a great experience, and getting to learn more about the industry and meet amazing people, and really being able to make a difference, and connect a lot of dots that frankly I didn't when I was naive and working in a factory in Charlotte or in Fort Payne or in Mulheim in Germany, didn't realize as an American. But it's really changed my perspective being here in DC. So I'm very thankful for it.
So when I talk to you, I mean, you seem like someone, so much about government contracting, the industry, the competitors, how the government thinks, the classified side, but you're relatively new to GovCon compared to most of the folks we might even have on the show. How did you make that transition?
Well, it's the interesting thing about me, Jake, is I'm always interested in learning. One of the things that I learned very early on in my career and my training was you should really try to be interested, not interesting. which sounds kind of funny and cliche when you say it, but I'm always interested. So I always want to learn, whether it's, learning a new language or, learning about a culture or learning about an industry. So I always view that the best part of our jobs is really to learn. So I leaned in hard. And that means whenever I'm meeting somebody or talking to somebody that does something that I don't really know about, I am using that time to just let them tell me everything that they know and be interested in them or interested in what they do. And it's been very successful for me in terms of this learning journey I'm on. And I have a long way to go, but it's been really interesting, and I just excited to keep learning.
And you have this also have kind of a hobby or a soft spot around like boating, right? That I
Yeah,
guess being a Florida guy, doesn't Rollins have like one of the top rowing teams or boating teams in the
they
nation where you did your MBA?
They probably do. I was getting my MBA when I was working in internal audit for Siemens, so I had really, I didn't even really have time to do anything except go to school and work. But I'm sure that they did have one. I saw them out there on the lake when I was walking to the library. But yeah, I was born in upstate New York, but while I was basically at the time when I was ending getting sick, my family decided to move to Fort Myers, Florida. So Fort Myers, Florida in the 1980s does not look like it did today. It was a relatively small town with amazing fishing. And my dad was a big golfer, and he said you got to either be a golfer or a boater because there's not enough time to do both. And well, it was just really hot there, and golfing like in the summer was not fun, and you had to get up early. So not things that kids want to do in the summertime. So I took up fishing and sailing and um, everything around the water. That's my happy place. That's where the family goes to relax in the summer. And in the wintertime, you'll find us in Florida a lot, just with friends and family. But we still actively go fishing and sailing and all of those things. And it's a hobby that you can do lifelong. Now I've got two young boys, and I enjoy doing it with them, teaching them how to do it, and it's just awesome. So really relaxing. And
Are there
yeah,
any
that's my hobby, man. That's what I love.
are there lessons from boating that you use in work? Any
Oh yes.
similarities?
So for anybody who's ever docked a boat in a hard current, or a bad wind, you have to remember that moving fast or panicking or doing anything like that is the worst thing you can do. Same thing if you're a competitive sailor. If you're coming into a mark and there's four boats coming towards you, and that's a time when a lot of people will panic or will get antsy. And in fact, those are the times as a leader we have to calm down because folks are looking at us to say, okay, if the leader is calm, we're going to be calm. And I would say, that's really one thing that I have learned in friend life about that is, really that when things get intense and things get tough, is if we as the leaders can calm down, it makes those around us feel calm as well. And that's really important actually when you're talking about, today with technology, the rest of it's pretty easy. You just tell it where you want to go and push a button and the autopilot takes you there. So it's not like it used to be.
Great metaphor. Great metaphor. So let's switch in a little bit. Talk about Siemens as a whole is an $80 billion company. I mean, one of the
Yeah.
biggest out there. And how long have they been in the government business? And how big is your slice of the pie? And what's it like working inside of a big foreign company, a German company, and doing something very, very unique?
Well, it's interesting. I would say in the scale of Siemens, SGT is pretty small. We're pretty small dollar wise, but we're very impactful in terms of what we do because our mission is really to put our products in places where our parent can't. So you talked about FOCI mitigation before, and what that really means is we're separated from Siemens as a U.S. company, and that's for a purpose, and that's to serve the Department of War. It's to serve the government in classified spaces in any of their missions, and so that makes us really unique, and that obviously our technology is amazing, and the government really wants to have it. So our job is to get it in there, and then we also let the commercial businesses follow as well. So we do government work out of the commercial business side of Siemens as well, and we help with that as well in terms of maintaining GSA schedules or helping with contracts, whatever we can do to help it, move forward. In terms of what's it like being in part of a big international company, well, it can be challenging at times because folks don't understand really what we're doing. We also live in this environment where, you know, we can't tell them everything that we're doing because of the nature of the work. And so there has to be an extreme amount of trust between all the parties. And so that's one of the things that we work on a lot internally is how do we build and maintain that trust with our internal partners. When we say, hey, we need this part or we need this, and they say, well, where are you shipping it to? Well, we can say you can ship it to Crystal City. So it's very interesting in that dynamic. In terms of our software, we've got the best engineering product lifecycle management software in the world. And so it came into Siemens through a U.S. company. So it was already very well ingrained within the Department of War and within the defense industrial base. And so Siemens made a very strategic choice to leave a lot of that intellectual property in the U.S. And so our job obviously is to get that into the government behind the firewall. And that allows it to be used out in the DIB and in the supply network to make sure that the government is doing it. A great example of that would be the next aircraft carrier will be delivered digitally on our software. So it's the largest. It's actually the largest, I believe, engineering bill of material in the world will be on our technology. And that's just one example. And I think that's where SGT plays an important part, because without us, the government wouldn't be able to do that. And so they would miss the opportunity to use all of our amazing tools. And I think that's where we partner also very well with Siemens in terms of being able to deliver it worldwide. So that's another important aspect of SGT is, we serve the Army and the Army facilities, not software related, but also something very important. If there's we serve the Army in Europe, we can serve the Army in Korea and Japan, or in the Navy in Japan, all the places where Siemens has, an infrastructure, and we can go help. So that's a big deal. Obviously, if we talk about like the AUKUS program and where we're gearing up as a company to help both the Australian government and the Navy in Australia. So those are just a few examples of where that international reach is a big deal. And because we're already there, we don't have to start from scratch. We know how to operate in that country. We have partners in that country. We know how to get product into that country. So that just enables us to move with a lot more agility in places where, some just US-based companies can't.
Yeah. That's, I can imagine for the government, Siemens products and services are globally known, and I imagine there's business coming in that you'll even try and get just because of the brand and the government wanting access to that incredible global capability, right?
Absolutely. I mean, we're the number one, PLC in the world, right? So obviously, if the government, is going to do something abroad or at the edge, they want to be able to use our technology. And we strive ourselves on that. One of the big differences about Siemens is we have this ability, we call it, closing the loop, which is really from the beginning of the product to shipping it out the door. We can have that all managed in one place. And the benefit of that is that, it's closing that loop here. You don't have the integration challenges. You don't have all of these other multiple companies. And, there's a lot of terms for it. But I think what we like to say is that you're closing that loop. So you can start with that product, go through the whole cycle, and weave that, what we call a digital thread, all the way through. And if you think about it that way, when you have a new product, then it can be born digital. And then it can, you can simulate everything from the factory to how it's going to operate in the field and everything before you ever build it. So if you think about the dollars that, any company spends or any government spends, the savings is just huge, being able to do all this digitally and using digital twins and digital thread. And in our case, because we are doing the design through our CAD tools, you're making a physics-based digital twin, which is very different. Especially when you're talking about a product, is you can simulate the physics of what's going to happen to that product through its life cycle or for whatever other reason you want to do, and really put it through the paces digitally before you ever build it. So you're talking about a huge savings in time and, of course, in money. But I think in where we are today, it's more about time, being able to go simulate. If I got to take a factory and change it to make, more product, how do I do that in a digital environment? So I don't waste any time, chipping up the floor when I could be, figuring out how to optimize it in the digital space.
Talk about power. I mean, power is the meaning of power in the government sense is really changing. It used to be primarily power generation was, a primary backup power, but now power it's so much everything from the power to back AI, the power for smart cities. How's Siemens involved in like innovating around power solutions for the government?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think what we're doing is really helping. It used to be called resiliency. Now I think it's. In fact, we were talking about this morning. I think it's about in the future, those who have energy are going to be the ones, and we call it power dominance. And so, one of the things that we're really helping the government on is how to look at these bases around the world and in other areas, and how are we protecting access to their grid, whether that's with the microgrid solution or we've got we built, as an example, the energy backbone for the naval station at Guantanamo Bay, where we have worked with Siemens Energy to put in a combined cycle power plant. But we've also got batteries, we've got solar there. It's an independent microgrid, obviously, because it's an island. But really working on how do we make sort of a model of all we need to really worry about is fuel, which is fairly easy for us to move around. In terms of how do you keep these bases online in the event that a lot of our international spaces and even a lot of our U.S. based bases are dependent upon that cable that's coming across the fence from the utility. And so I think as you see more data centers, you see more leverage on the grid. How we defend that infrastructure is going to become really important. I think that's one place we're really stepping up to work on it. Since Siemens Energy became a separate company, we stepped out of the power generation side. And that was really to focus on how to moving the electrons around there. How do we have the best switch gear? How do we, and again, going back to digital twins, when we're going to build a data center, how do we make the most of what we've got? How can we cool it better? What's the most optimum way to build it, design it? All those things are things that we're doing every day as Siemens. So I think that is going to be the future for energy, is not necessarily is being able to use it better. And that's why we're working also on how to make things more energy efficient, because we have to, because we don't have enough generation. We certainly don't have enough transmission to do everything that we want to do in these data centers. So we've got to figure out how to ways to trim little bits of energy along the way.
Great, a great quote from it was Lieutenant General Abu Nahom. He was on our podcast a few months back, and he talked about Indo-PACOM, and everything's about communications and energy and power. It's just everything you do out there, and whoever can come up with the solutions for that in that kind of dispersed environment is going to win.
Yeah, I mean, that's where we're partnering with a lot of the SMRs, the small modular reactor companies, in terms of helping with them with design and even looking at digital twins of the buildings and how they're going to lay out. Because to me, that's, if you want my personal opinion, that's the easiest way to get that kind of power remotely, because then you take a lot of the fueling and everything out of it. And I think we're going to see a big surge in this SMR technology simply because we don't have gas pipelines everywhere. And to move the amount of diesel we got to move in Indo-PACOM to keep operating at the levels of energy we need is just going to be prohibitive. I think there's a huge amount of opportunity there. I'm a big fan of nuclear power, having serviced a lot of the nuclear plants in the U.S. when I was part of Siemens Energy. There's a huge difference between when you walk in a coal or a gas plant, a nuke plant, just in the way they operate. And so I hope we see more nuclear coming online and hopefully in these smaller reactors faster.
I want to get to that when we talk about 3 years out. I want to hear how much that's proliferated, because it's a buzzword or a concept I'm hearing a lot about from a lot of our different guests. The other thing I think of when I talk to you, it's always about data, data lakes and what you guys are doing around delivering solutions around data. And it sounds innocuous. Everybody talks about data now, but the way you talk about it to me is pretty damn compelling. So what's SGT doing in this space now, John?
Well, we're doing a lot, Jake. I mean, obviously our products and our engineering design tools, which now have, AI embedded in them and all these other things, and able to design and to be able to get through the process faster. We could do, 5 podcasts just on the tools. But I think the key thing there is, with inside of our core tool, which is Team Center, There's a lot of data, and it's all physics based, engineering data. And I think one of the things that we've done is last year we acquired a company called Altair Engineering, and we are in the process of integrating them. They have a great electromagnetic simulation and do all these amazing engineering things that was a good fit within our portfolio. But the other thing they were really good at was high performance computing and what I'm going to call data mining. There's a lot of different terms for it. But what that gave us as Siemens was the ability to build what I would call a real time sort of data lake. So in the past, you had to, with any of the competitors out there, you had to take your data, export it from your main system, put it in this data lake, and then it was a sort of a static data set, and then mine it. What we can do now with a tool called RapidMiner is be able to use that and build layers on top of your existing data to be able to go in and get what we need. What that gives us is a couple what we think are key differentiators. Number one, attribute level data security. So, right now, a lot of these things are getting dumped in the lake. People can query it. So we've spent years and hundreds, probably millions of dollars figuring out how to put security here and there. So folks within an organization we don't have people getting access to data that are not supposed to. Super important in the government space. I think the second thing is because we don't have to, export it out of any environment, we're able to get real time updating, which means when an engineer changes a drawing, if somebody's querying that data for another reason downstream or another place, they're getting the real time access to that data and vice versa. So whenever there's inputs coming, so again, we talked about closing the loop, right? If that's happening, you have inputs coming into the data all the time. So that can happen in the engineering org, it can happen in the supply chain org, it can happen in the factory, it can happen out in the field. And so what we're able to do with these tools is be able to sit on top of our existing data sets and be able to pull out of that data what is needed. We'll have a really great use case coming soon. That's in an area very much in national security and really with a key partner of ours. But that's how we look at that, which is different than the way some of our competitors do. And it's simply because we have been around a long time doing this engineering and doing product lifecycle management. So it's sort of the next phase. One of the things that we pride ourselves on as Siemens is really being an interface with other companies. So if, no matter who our client is running or our customer is running, we're able to interface. So we're interfacing with all the other data lake companies out there too. And we think we add this special sauce of really being able to put that attribute level security and then being able to get that real time updating so that the data is, you're using the most update to date data to make really good decisions. And we have our own low code tool called Mendex, which you can lay on top of that and build your own apps. But as I said, we could spend 5 podcasts just talking about all the different products.
It's great because I don't think people necessarily think of Siemens in that area of work, but it's obviously an area you guys have actually a head start in being able to execute. I want to zoom back a little bit. I'm leading to the future a little bit. We got a request right now from the administration for a $1.5 trillion defense budget for 27. What are you doing to react to that? What does that mean to you? What do you think is going to happen? And what are you doing as a CEO to get ready for that?
Well, I mean, as a CEO, whenever your industry is growing, you're always happy. So, we're hoping that we see a lot of places where money needs to be spent and we're hoping that it'll go there. Obviously, we work really hard with our government partners on that. One of the things that we're the most probably excited about is the shipbuilding. We're very involved with the shipbuilding. We are the engineering and software partner for Hyundai and Hanwha we work with as well. And so we see them coming into the market. Newport news we see and money going in there. And I also think AI is going to have a huge impact on that because there's such a big gap in the amount of jobs we need to get it done. And so hopefully the technology solution will fill some of those gaps. And I think that is a really big thing that's coming down the pipe. We're really hoping to see greater investment in the public shipyards. They're very much in the dark ages. We've been working very extensively within the Navy on that, and we have some really great partners there. And again, that's where Siemens is offering what I would call a closed loop solution for them to really modernize those shipyards. And I think we can really help there. And then I just think, we see a lot of people talk about what I would call the non-traditionals or the speed to government. we love speed. I mean, we deal with speed in the commercial markets all the time, and so I'm really excited to see more speed coming. I mean, Army is having a venture capital event, and and all these other things that are happening. I think the non-traditionals are going to help those who are the traditional GovCon companies, sort of move forward, and do new things. And I think once that pendulum, sort of evens out, we'll be in a really great spot. So I'm excited to see what's going to happen. We'll see how much of the 1.5 trillion gets through, but we're excited to see that it's in the focus.
The macro trend is there, and the flip side of that is you also have kind of the European defense space, which I know may not be your mandate, but it's it's also going through the macro trend, right?
Yeah. No, I mean, in general, it's not our mandate, but at the end of the day, we have partners in Europe. And, there's
Imagine.
not a week that goes by that we're not on the phone with our partners in Europe trying to help them how to move faster and better for their customers, just like we do here.
Yeah.
And that's the benefit of that, global international organization, is that we're able to do that as an organization.
Yeah, interesting. So let's go in the future. Let's go 3 years in the future. It's 2029. We're in a new administration. I would assume we're in a new administration. And we've been through 3 years of this pretty aggressive change to procurement. You're talking about micronuclear, and what is the let's kind of carve out your energy space first. Like what does that look like in 2029? What's the government doing different, and how's industry supporting it?
Well, I think the first thing they're going to do is you're going to see more investment by the government into energy, whether it's the grid, whether it's production, whether it's sustainment. I think we're definitely going to see more investment. So because without it, a lot of these things that we want to do are not going to come through. They're not going to work. So I think you're going to see definitely a rise in defense spending, also around protecting the power grid and protecting the energy. I think that's something that's very much needed, and we'll see. The other thing that I would see, and one that I'm excited about, and we're really proud to be a part of, is I think the biggest thing we're going to see is hopefully the benefits of these reshoring efforts. I think the big one right now that most people are talking about is in the semiconductor space. I mean, if you think about what's going on there, out in Arizona, it's awesome. But I think that's just one example. We're going to see more of this reshoring, and what I really hope is that, that's the sort of a renaissance of our manufacturing industrial base. Having been part of that, I get really chapped when I hear people say, "Well, we can't make stuff in the U.S. anymore, and we can't do this and we can't do that." And I completely think that's a bunch of baloney. We kept the electrical infrastructure going in the U.S., from Fort Payne, Alabama, building parts, on a dime and responding whenever folks need it. So we can do it in the U.S. And I'm just excited to see more and more of that, coming back, and that resurgence, I think, will provide us the backstop that we need in order to be, to succeed and to win in the future. And so I think that's what I think we'll see in 3 years, is more of that.
It comes back to the energy thing. We're going to do the reshoring, then we need the energy infrastructure, right?
Correct.
Okay,
it's a chicken and egg discussion, right? For sure.
Yeah. So investments in energy, investments in securing our energy infrastructure, focus on reshoring. I guess a lot of the shipbuilding, I mean, it's part of that reshoring, right? And building that fleet. This looks like promising times for SGT, given these macro trends that we're looking at right now, John.
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, we think it's great. Certainly as that reshoring happens, there's going to be a lot of need for technology. And that's why, we're investing even in apprenticeship programs for high schoolers to learn how to program robots and to program PLCs and the controllers. We really believe in it. Last week I was with a university talking about how we can supplement their engineering school with more of our tools, and how we can, as a big company in the U.S., give back and help educate those young Americans, so that when they graduate from college, they're ready to do it. And we also do it with the apprenticeship program. So for folks who want to go to trade schools and have a different path in college, that's a really great career. I can tell you, I worked in Charlotte, North Carolina, and we had a lot of amazing folks, and I would have died for having some of these programs because it was very difficult for us to find the right type of skilled labor. And, that's an 8 to 5 job, which uh, most of those folks were making six figures. So it's not a bad job at all.
Yep, you're right. You're right. So I'm going to nail you down, ask you for one word to describe your gut feeling about the future of the industry in this space that SGT is playing in.
Yeah. I'm going to say the easiest word for me, Jake, is I'm amazed every day. And I say that because the technology is moving so fast, and the things that we're seeing and the things that we are able to do as a company, Siemens, but also as a nation. And when I talk to folks, I that's the only word I can use. Is we're gonna have things happen in the future, that we never even thought were possible. So I think it's an amazing time.
Amazing. All right. That's a good one. That's a good one, John. Hey, I really enjoyed the conversation. So thankful for you taking the time to come on the show. I know you're busy. Sounds like you're really busy and going to get even busier. But I think it's important for our community to hear from, one of the true experts in the industry. So thanks for coming on, spend some time with us, John.
Well, thanks for having me, Jake. It was really a pleasure, and it's always a pleasure to spend time with you, and I really appreciate it.
I look forward to seeing you at Greenbrier.
Yeah,
maybe having a little barbecue out there on the lawn. It's always good.
Sounds like a plan to me.
Absolutely. And to our audience out there, hope you enjoyed this discussion. We thank everybody for joining us for this episode. We got a great episode lined up for next week. And I say it every week. I mean it. I know it's true that the future of GovCon is happening today. So we'll see you next week. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, John.
Thank you, Jake. It was great.
All right, so thanks for joining me on another episode of the Future of GovCon. I hope you enjoyed today's conversation and some of the bold predictions. If you did, take a second, share it on your social media, subscribe on YouTube. If you have any ideas for future guests or topics you'd like to have covered, hit me up on LinkedIn. I'm always there, and you can always learn more about precision talent solutions at pts.careers. Look forward to seeing you next week on our next episode.